Super Retro Force.
What's going on, my fellow Belmonts? It's the Mad Belmont here, and today I figured I'd talk about something that I actually got inspired by playing the Castlevania Dominus Collection, which is an amazing collection, by the way. If you haven't gotten to that yet, you need to play it, and if you have missed the announcement because you're living under a rock like Patrick Starr, go check out this video right here. I talk about the release of that on release day. So anyway, since that came out, and since there's a game in there called Haunted Castle Revisited, which is a reimagining of Haunted Castle, an arcade game, I figured, you know what? Why not go back and actually look at some other games within the Castlevania franchise that I think deserve that Haunted Castle Revisited treatment. So, without further ado, let's just get right into the games, shall we? I don't have a set number here. I'm just going to talk about some games that I feel deserve this treatment. So, let's go. So, the first game that I think deserves that Haunted Castle Revisited treatment is easily Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge. Now, while it is not a bad game in retrospect, I do think, though, that if you give it that Haunted Castle Revisited treatment, it will get a bigger audience for it. It'll get more recognition because as a Game Boy game, it's good for what it is, but it definitely could be better. It could look better, it could play better, and I think that if you give this the Haunted Castle Revisited treatment, you could do that. You could give it that 16-bit aesthetic, you can rework the soundtrack to be much better than it is, which actually pretty good for a Game Boy soundtrack, but you can make it so much better. You could also make the levels bigger than they are in the Game Boy game because you're going to have a lot more space to work with, so you can actually rework the levels. And I honestly feel like this is one of the most prime candidates for this, as well as the next game that I'm going to be talking about here. The next one I want to talk about here is the one that actually inspired this list in the first place, and that is Castlevania Legends. That's right, the third of the Game Boy games, and I thought about this, and I was like, man, if they had just executed it right the first time, we wouldn't really need this, but now, with this Haunted Castle Revisited on the table here, you can bring Legends back, give it a 16-bit aesthetic, you can make the levels better, you can make the gameplay better, you can sit there and you can rewrite the story to make it fit and make sense within the timeline, and then, boom, there you go. You have a female Belmont in there, which I've always thought was a cool idea, but was just never executed properly by Konami. And so, that way you can bring Sonya back into the canon. And it makes sense. Hashtag Justice for Sonya. I've been preaching this for years. So, that is what I think could happen to this game if you go and you do that. And that's what I think about this entry. So let's talk about the next entry. The next game I'm going to talk about here is Castlevania Order of Shadows, the first mobile experience within the Castlevania series, and it was executed absolutely horribly back in the day when it released on mobile. But if you go and you revisit it in the way that you did with Haunted Castle, you can take that horrible, terrible, awful experience and you can actually make something good out of it. So what you can do is you can change the aesthetic because it looked absolutely horrendous on mobile. You can tweak the gameplay to actually function properly, and you can tweak the levels to be a little bit longer, look a little bit better, make the enemy variety a little bit more along the lines of what a typical Castlevania game would have in terms of enemy variety, and you would have one of the biggest turnarounds in history when it comes to this franchise. I mean, Haunted Castle Revisited is one of those examples. It took a terrible arcade game and it tweaked it into one of the best Castlevania games ever made with the revisited version of it. And if you do the same thing with Order of Shadows here, you can have the exact same thing happen. So Konami, I know that you may not be watching this, but if you take anything away from this video, make it the previous entry that I talked about or this entry, because both of those two games deserve some type of love and proper treatment, okay? So those are the games that I feel deserve the Haunted Castle Revisited treatment. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that I missed something here? If you did, please be sure to leave a comment down below. I'd love to discuss it with you. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like. That would help YouTube see that I don't suck. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, you better hit that subscribe button, because if you like Castlevania content, you're gonna get a lot of it over here, okay? I'm one of the biggest Castlevania fans on the planet, and I love talking about this series. I could do it for hours, and I do so right here on this channel, as well as talking about other things like horror games and such. So if that sounds good to you, hit that sub button down there. And without further ado, have fun on the hunt, my fellow Belmonts. I'll see you in the next video, and peace out.